Hello everyone and welcome to the round 3 recap of the Women's Candidates Tournament 2026. My name is Svitlana, I am a Women's International Master from Canada, and today's candidates games were a real treat. Coming in, we had only seen draws so far, but as predicted, there were some decisive results today. But I will not give any spoilers until the end, just in case. The most roller coaster game happened between Tan Zhongyi, the previous candidates tournament winner, and Kateryna Lagno, who has also been a top player for a very long time. It started with Tan Zhongyi playing as white e4 and Lagno as black replying with e5. The game featured the Italian, which is very often seen at high level. I don't think it was a surprise to either player. Tan played c3 and Lagno replied d6. Now, by far, the most commonly played move is knight f6 here instead, but this is a logical alternative too. So now d4, striking in the center, pawn took, the other pawn took, and bishop retreated back to b6 instantly. Now, bishop to b4 is a serious option in the main line, but not as good in this line. It's still played by a lot of players based on the database, but maybe some players confuse the two lines, and the engine really dislikes it for black here because of knight c3, and now there's no knight takes e4, like there was an option in that other line. So white just castles, plays knight d5, and there's some obscure forced lines that lead to a big advantage for white, but we don't really need to know that because in the game, bishop b6 was played. Now, white continued the development like this, and now came a novelty, queen d3. The engine likes this move a lot, but it has only been played twice in the database by some amateur players, so it has never been played at such high level before, based on what I could find. And this seems to be preparation by Zhongyi because she played it instantly. The idea is just to support the center with that queen and possibly get rid of a future bishop g4 pin. So now Kateryna spent 15 minutes on the clock and finally decided to just castle. And that's one of the good replies. Now both players continue regular development with bishop here, h6, the bishop retreated, and here, an interesting idea like g5 is possible. Oftentimes, in this opening, this is an option, but also there's some craziness with knight takes g5 that could have been played, and I don't think either of them wanted to calculate and risk something like this. Super double-edged for both sides, but yeah, definitely worth considering still, so I'm sure it's still an option. Instead, she played knight b4, which also makes sense, finally attacking that queen that came out a little bit too early in the opening, and the queen went back to d2. So now, Kateryna plays d5, and I would say black got everything they wanted out of the opening. Good center, even that knight can come back to d5 just in case. And honestly, everything is looking good, and most importantly, white is not castled yet. Now, Tan takes e takes d5, and this was actually a key moment because both sides need to be quite precise. So just to give you an idea, a regular recapture with the knight is not possible because knight takes d5, and this pin is really not allowing black to regain that pawn just yet. And if they play something like queen e8 check, which looks good at first to give the check to the king, and after king here, there's a really nice tactic with the knight taking and queen b5 in the end. So as you can see, black is doing just fine here, gaining back the piece and being better. But there's king to d1, and suddenly white is the one winning with that extra pawn and great pieces and threatening bishop takes f6. So as you can see, the margin of error is very, very thin here, where even one move can swing it from being almost winning for black to winning for white. So instead of all of that, rook e8 happened, which was the right way to go. Very precise from black. And here the big question arises. What do we do with that king that is stuck right in the center? Should it go to d1 or to f1? And honestly, it's not an easy decision. Either one leads to an approximately equal position. Well, equal is a strong word. It's very complicated, of course. But she went king f1. And trust me, this king has a long road ahead. There's a lot that's going to happen to that king going forward. From now on, I would say the initiative is shifting more to Black's side. So she decides to focus on piece development and forget about that pawn, give it up forever with c6. So the pawn took back. Black does have compensation for that pawn, and as I said, it's roughly equal, most likely. Now, White also wants to keep developing, and here she plays bishop to a6. It's a little bit awkward bishop placement. It would have been better to play bishop e6, and Lagno even was upset after the game that she didn't find it. But honestly, the way it happened, it still led to a very, very interesting position. But the reason why bishop a6 was not as good is that now the knight is in this strange position and it wants to go back to d5, but now it has to spend so many extra moves doing that. So Zhongyi probably felt that this was a chance, and she played something incredible. She went pawn to g4. I must say, it takes a lot of courage to play a move like that, and the idea is correct, so she's totally right in wanting to play that. Even safer was to just play g3 and get that spot for the king to escape, and this would be a pretty good edge for White going forward with the king being safe. Well, relatively safe. But instead she plays this, so the king still has that escape square, but that's not what this move is about. It's about starting White's attack of their own. So Black's knight, in the meantime, is going to d5, while White is ready to open the g-file, which she does with the next move g5. Honestly, very courageous to go for that with the king on f1, but it's great to see games like that where it's really becoming more and more imbalanced. So far, I would say White got a really good attack ahead. Tan also had 50 minutes on her clock to Lagno's 6 minutes, which is a fairly good difference in such a complex position. And I noticed that she has a tendency to, Tan Zhongyi has a tendency to play quickly in complicated positions, which sometimes helps build pressure and induces the opponent to make a mistake, but sometimes it could backfire. And that's exactly what she did here. Even though she had a lot of time, she played relatively quickly rook to g4. What she should have done instead was just take that pawn. And it looks obvious at first, but there's still some things to calculate, like queen here, with the idea queen h3. But here White had to find queen g5. So with the idea to cover queen g2 against that check. And things stay very, very complicated. Even after this, Black has a lot of ideas, so does White. There's even crazy moves like queen g7 that are possible here. And yeah, a lot to calculate. So definitely don't blame either of them for going for it. But that was still the best way to go to continue the attack. Instead, rook here. And that one extra tempo was exactly what Black needed to Uno reverse that attack and start attacking on her own. So she goes queen up, attacking the rook. Rook gets defended and queen f5. Suddenly, it is Black who is making serious threats against the White's king. White defends it with queen d3. And if you'd like, here is the moment where you can pause the video and try to think what you would play as Black. It was really beautiful in the game. So have a few seconds to think. And the move was knight e3. this is what she played in the game, and I would say this is the second most satisfying moment of the game. You'll find out what the top one was in the end, but this was beautiful. So not only are we attacking 3 pieces at once, we are forcing white to take and take that knight instead. So the attack is going super well, but white has enough resources to defend, somehow holding it together. For the next while, Lagno is completely winning. But under a minute on the clock, there's a lot of pressure, and there's no clear, simple knockout, so she has to just kind of build it up, which is not easy to do, especially against such an experienced and good opponent as Zhongyi. So they both keep playing. They play reasonable moves each. So far, nothing too big happens. So Lagno tries to activate her pieces, Zhongyi tries to create some threats, and eventually we get some complications. So here we got d5. White did really well to create all of these chances to make it complicated and try to induce that mistake. So now, after this, the knight gets in, and what black should have done here is just get rid of that knight. That knight was way too active, and it was not a bad idea to just give up an exchange for it and just live a much calmer life with without an exchange, but with really good piece activity. Instead, though, she played rook f7. And what happens now is that knight d4, and she makes a mistake. She should play queen h3, but she goes queen to e4. And that mistake turns the game around. Because rook c7 is white's rebuttal, and that just wins a piece. Free bishop just like that, and now white is up a piece. Of course, black plays on, but after b3, white is pretty solid and completely winning. Lagno even said in the post-game interview that she genuinely wanted to resign here. It's it hurts a lot to just blunder a bishop like that and have barely any attacking chances left, but she saw one final trick, and that's actually what happened in the game. Queen f7, played by white, and that's the beginning of the wrong path. So the queen gets attacked with the rook, and you might think, is this a free knight? Well, not really. Still, this was white's best continuation, to take that knight and get pinned on the h-file, but instead they sacrifice the queen for quite a few pieces. So now there's this line right here, which leads to a very cool imbalance. White remains with slightly better chances here with having so many pieces against the queen, but definitely would have been a nice ending to see how it unfolds. And that was white's best chance at that point already. Instead, though, she decides maybe she just saw rook h6, wanted to keep some chances alive of the attack, and there doesn't seem to be a reason to do something so drastic. Why not just take the pawn instead? And this led to, I would say, the move of the round. Lagno here played an amazing move, and it was knight to f4. I mean, it's a really beautiful knight sacrifice, and it is the second time in the game that she does something like this with the knight. And you know things are bad when the computer suggests queen f5 as white's first line at this point. So this actually really, once again, turned the game completely the other direction. You might wonder, what happens if we just take that free knight, though? And the answer is the nicest checkmate ever happens. Rook h6, the king goes up, queen d3, and of course knight f3 is not really something we want to do because we lose a queen. So instead, queen f3, white looks totally safe, but g4, giving up a queen for rook h3, checkmate. The rook is the only piece left, but that's all black needs. And the game was very close to ending like that. I think this will make many tactics books. I'm sure about that. So in the game itself, of course, mate in one. It would have been nice to allow mate in one, but she wanted to fight on, which is fair enough. So she kept that going and gave up a queen instead, and ended up with 2 pieces against the queen, which is just not enough. And a few moves later, she resigned. So I really love this game. It teaches us a lot about resilience on both sides, I think, because look at how many times both of them came back from what seemed like completely hopeless positions. And that's exactly the thrilling candidates games that we love to see, and I hope we'll see more in the future rounds. So about the rest of round 3 results, we had a draw between Vaishali and Anna Muzichuk. We had a draw between Gorechkina and Deshmukh, and a win by Asobayeva against Zhu, which was also a wonderful game, actually, worth checking out. And now we have Lagno and Asobayeva leading the field by half a point. And I'm sure there will be many nice games ahead, but I will be going away to a tournament, so I will not be covering some of the next rounds. The tournament is not the candidates, unfortunately. I'll be playing Canadian Women's Championship for the next week, so the recaps will resume in the second half of the candidates. Still, I hope you guys will follow along the women's candidates games regardless. I definitely will. And I'll be back for a few final rounds. Bye bye, everyone, and see you next time.